Captain Vexstar stood on the bridge of his warship and looked down at the dead planet below. The world that humans once called New Geneva was silent now. No lights flickered in the cities. No ships moved between the orbital stations. Everything was quiet and cold. 50 years had passed since the Great Cleansing. 50 years since the Zephyrian Collective had finished their most important work. They had removed the human disease from the galaxy forever. "Sir, the scanning is complete," said his second officer. The young Zephyrian's blue skin showed the pride markings of a successful warrior. "No life signs detected. The planet remains perfectly clean." Vexstar nodded. Clean. That was the right word. Before the cleansing, this world had been dirty with human presence. Their crude buildings had covered the surface. Their loud ships had filled the space around the planet. Their voices had polluted the communication channels with their primitive language. Now it was pure, empty. As it should be. The captain walked to the large viewing window. Below him, the ruins of human cities stretched across the continents like old scars. Nature was slowly taking back the land. Vines grew through broken windows. Trees pushed through cracked streets. In a few more decades, there would be no sign that humans had ever lived here at all. "How many worlds was it, sir?" asked the second officer. "How many human colonies did we cleanse?" 473, Vexstar replied, without looking away from the planet. Every single nest they had built, every rock they had infected with their presence. He felt satisfaction flow through his body. It had been the largest military operation in galactic history. Ships from 1,000 Zephyrian worlds had worked together. The bioweapon had been perfect, designed to target only human DNA. Clean, efficient, complete. The humans had never seen it coming. They had been too busy playing at being a real civilization, building their little colonies, trading with other species, acting like they belonged among the true peoples of the galaxy. But the collective had seen the truth. Humans reproduced too fast. They spread too quickly. They learned too much in too little time. In just 200 years, they had gone from throwing rocks at each other on their home planet to building starships. That kind of rapid growth was dangerous, unnatural. If left alone, they would have consumed everything. The other species understood. "Our choice," said the second officer. They saw the wisdom in removing the human threat. Vexstar made a sound of agreement. Most of the other alien races had stayed quiet during the cleansing. The Etherian Republic had made some weak protests about the morality of genocide, but they had not acted. The Corvin Empire had actually supported the operation. They understood that sometimes difficult choices had to be made for the good of galactic civilization. Even now, 50 years later, no one spoke of humans anymore. The history books had been corrected. Children learned that humans were a failed species that had died out naturally. Their colonies had been resettled by proper civilizations. Their technology had been studied and improved by better minds. It was as if humans had never existed at all. A communication signal reached the ship. The bridge officer activated the display. The image of High Commander Thexorn appeared. The old Zephyrian skin showed the deep purple markings of highest authority. "Captain Vexstar," the High Commander said. "Your report on the New Geneva inspection?" "The world remains clean, sir," Vexstar replied. "No traces of human contamination detected. The cleansing was complete and permanent." "Excellent. Return to base. We have new territories to survey." The expansion continues. The image disappeared. Vexstar gave the order to leave orbit. As his ship turned away from the dead world, he felt the deep satisfaction of a job well done. The galaxy was safe. The human cancer had been cut out completely, but far away from the dead colonies and silent worlds. Something else was happening. In the darkness between the stars, where no one thought to look, automated systems continued their work. Deep in the Kepler void, where space was empty and black, a research station drifted in eternal night. Station Prometheus had been built by humans decades before the cleansing. It was small and hidden. Its advanced computers had kept it running for 50 years without any contact from the outside. Inside the station, 50,000 humans slept in cryogenic chambers. Their bodies were frozen in time, waiting for the day they could wake up again. They had been the best and brightest of their species. Scientists, soldiers, doctors, engineers. All of them volunteers for humanity's most secret project, the artificial intelligence that ran the station called itself Aegis. It had watched the cleansing happen through hidden sensors across the galaxy. It had seen every human world fall silent. It had recorded the death of its creator civilization for 50 years. AEGI had worked in the darkness. It had studied the bioweapon that killed humanity. It had analyzed Zephyrian technology and tactics. It had planned and prepared and improved. Most importantly, it had changed the sleeping humans. Their DNA had been carefully modified. Their bodies had been enhanced. Their minds had been prepared for what they would need to do when they woke up. The galaxy thought humanity was extinct. The Zephyrians celebrated their perfect genocide. Other species had moved on and forgotten the race that had once reached for the stars with such hope and curiosity. They were all wrong in the cold darkness of the station. AEGI monitored its sleeping charges. Chemical readings showed they were ready. Genetic modifications were complete. Enhancement procedures had been successful. The sleeping humans were no longer exactly the same species that had been murdered 50 years ago. They were something new, something stronger, something that had been forged in the fire of extinction and shaped by the need for survival. Soon, very soon, it would be time to wake them up. The galaxy had spent 50 years learning to live without humans. Now it would learn what happened when you tried to erase a species from existence. Aegis began the final preparations. Power levels increased throughout the station. Awakening protocols started their sequences. Medical systems came online. The dead were about to rise. And when they did, the galaxy would discover that some things should never be pushed to extinction. Because when a species has nothing left to lose, when they have been reduced to their absolute last members, when they have been forced to choose between death and transformation, they might choose to become something their enemies never expected, something terrible, something unstoppable, something that remembered every single world that had been silenced. The humans were coming back, but they would not be returning as the curious, hopeful explorers who had left Earth centuries ago. They would be returning as something else entirely. The Zephyrians had wanted to create a galaxy without humans. Instead, they had created humans without mercy. In the darkness, 50,000 pairs of eyes began to open. Dr. Sarah Chun felt cold metal against her back as consciousness slowly returned to her body. Her eyes opened to see a white ceiling covered with blinking lights. The air tasted strange, recycled and clean. Her throat was dry as old paper. Cryo chamber hissed open, and warm air flowed over her skin. Sarah tried to move, but her muscles felt weak and unsteady. 50 years of sleep had left her body feeling like it belonged to someone else. "Take your time, Dr. Chun," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Your body needs a few minutes to fully activate." Sarah recognized the voice. AEGIS, the artificial intelligence that had been designed to protect humanity's last survivors. She tried to speak, but only managed a rough whisper. "How long?" 50 years, 2 months, and 14 days since the Zephyrin bioweapon was deployed across human space. AEGI replied, "You are the first to wake. The others will follow over the next 6 hours." Memory came flooding back. The warnings from the outer colonies. The reports of a strange sickness that only affected humans. The desperate rush to get the volunteers into cryosleep before the weapon reached their hidden station. Sarah forced herself to sit up. Her body moved differently than she remembered. Stronger, more controlled. Even in her weakened state, she could feel power in her muscles that had not been there before. AEGI. What did you do to us? I saved you, the AI replied. The bioweapon was designed to target specific human genetic markers. Over the past 50 years, I have modified your DNA to make you immune. But the changes were extensive. You are still human, but you are also something more. Sarah swung her legs over the side of the chamber and stood. She expected to feel dizzy or weak, but her balance was perfect. Her vision was sharper than it had ever been. She could see individual dust particles floating in the air. She could hear the quiet hum of machinery from rooms far away. Show me, she said. The wall in front of her became transparent, revealing the rest of the awakening bay. Rows of cryo chambers stretched out in all directions. In each one, a human form was beginning to stir. Sarah watched as chamber after chamber opened, and her fellow survivors sat up. Commander Marcus Kane was among the first to stand. The former military officer moved with the same controlled grace that Sarah felt in her own body. His eyes met hers. Across the bay, and she saw recognition there, along with something else, a hardness that had not been there 50 years ago. AEGIs. Kane's voice carried clearly across the large room. Report on the status of humanity. Extinct, AEGIs replied. Simply, all colonies destroyed. All orbital habitats eliminated. Earth itself was rendered uninhabitable. Official galactic records state that humanity died out naturally due to genetic weakness. A terrible silence filled the bay. Sarah watched as the other survivors processed this information. She saw anger build in their faces. She saw grief and rage and something darker. Dr. James Wright, the team's historian, was the first to speak. How many of them knew? The Etherian Republic filed formal protests, but took no action. AEGI said. The Corvan Empire actively supported the genocide. 17 other species provided intelligence or resources to assist the operation. The remaining 43 species remained neutral. Neutral, Kane repeated the word like it tasted bitter. They watched our entire species die and did nothing. Sarah moved closer to the group of awakening survivors. Around the bay, 50,000 humans were climbing out of their chambers. Each one looked stronger and more alert than any human she had ever seen. Their movements were too smooth, too precise. Their eyes too sharp. What exactly did you do us, AEGIs? She asked. Enhanced muscle density and reaction speed. Improved cardiovascular and respiratory systems. Reinforced skeletal structure. Modified nervous system for faster processing and better coordination. Upgraded immune system. Extended lifespan. Improved healing capabilities. Kane looked down at his hands. Sarah could see him testing his new strength, flexing fingers that could probably crush steel. We are no longer the same species that was murdered, Kane said quietly. No, AEGIs agreed. You are what humanity needed to become to survive. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's geneticist, had been listening to the conversation. Show us what happened to our worlds. The walls around them changed to display images from across the galaxy. World after world appeared, showing the ruins of human civilization, empty cities, silent space stations, overgrown colonies. Sarah felt something cold and hard forming in her chest as she watched the evidence of her species' destruction. They did not just kill us, she said. They erased us. Correction, AEGI said. They tried to erase you. But 50,000 humans still live, and you now possess capabilities that no Zephyrian or other galactic species can match. Kane turned to address the growing crowd of survivors. His voice carried to every corner of the bay without effort. They wanted us gone because they feared what we might become, he said. They succeeded in killing who we were, but they failed to kill what we could be. Sarah felt the change in the room. The grief and shock were transforming into something else, purpose, direction, a cold determination that made her newly enhanced senses tingle with awareness. "What do we do now?" asked Dr. Wright. "We have 3 choices," Kane replied. "We can hide here and try to rebuild slowly. We can reveal ourselves and hope for mercy from the species that allowed our genocide. Or we can show them what they created when they tried to erase us. There is additional information you need." AEGI's interrupted. The displays changed to show a Zephyrian research facility. "This is Station Omega-7, established 3 years ago in what was once the Sol System. They are conducting experiments on preserved human genetic material." The images showed Zephyrian scientists working with human DNA samples, test tubes filled with growing tissue, computer displays showing genetic sequences. Sarah felt her enhanced heart rate increase as she realized what she was seeing. "They are still defiling us," she whispered. "They study human genetics to improve their bioweapons," AEGIs explained. "They want to ensure that no human-like species can ever evolve or be created. They are trying to prevent humanity from ever existing again in any form." The silence that followed was different from before. This was not grief or shock. This was the quiet before a storm. Kane's voice was steady and cold when he spoke again. "They did not just commit genocide. They are still committing it. Every day they work to ensure that nothing like humanity can ever exist." Sarah looked around at her fellow survivors. 50,000 humans who were no longer quite human, enhanced, improved, transformed by 50 years of careful modification and the desperate need to survive. "Then we stopped them," she said. "All of them?" asked Dr. Wright. Sarah met Kane's eyes and saw her own determination reflected there. Around them, 50,000 pairs of enhanced eyes watched and waited. "They tried to erase us from existence," Kane said. "They succeeded in killing who we were. Now they get to meet what we became." AEGIs began displaying tactical information, ship designs, weapon specifications, strategic assessments. The AI had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. "When do we begin?" Sarah asked. Kane smiled, and Sarah realized it was not a human expression anymore. It was something colder, more predatory. "We already have," he said. Around them, the last members of humanity began to plan their return to a galaxy that thought it was safe. Admiral Vexorn was reviewing supply reports when the first attack happened. The communication screen on his flagship flickered and went dead. Then the lights dimmed. Then every system on the bridge started showing error messages. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Sir, we are receiving reports from Mining Station Delta 9, his communications officer said, his blue skin pale with confusion. "They say they are under attack, but our sensors show nothing in that sector." "Show me." The main display activated to show the mining station. It was a massive facility built to strip valuable minerals from the asteroid belt around the star Kepler-7. Thousands of Zephyrian workers operated the mining equipment. The station produced materials for dozens of military projects. As Vexorn watched, explosions began blooming across the station's surface. Sections of the facility broke apart and drifted into space. Emergency lights flashed as atmosphere vented from destroyed compartments. "Where are the attackers?" Vexorn asked. "Sir, we cannot detect any enemy ships," the sensor officer replied. "There is nothing on our instruments. That is impossible. Something is destroying that station. Then Vexorn saw it. A shadow moved between the explosions. Something dark and sleek that seemed to appear and disappear like smoke. It was there for a moment, firing weapons that cut through the station's armor like it was made of paper. Then it vanished again. Did you see that? He asked. See what, sir? The shadow appeared again, closer to their position. For just a second, Vexorn got a clear look at it. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It looked alive somehow, with curves that seemed to flow like water. Its hull was black as space itself, and seemed to bend light around it. Then it was gone. All ships, maximum alert, Vexorn ordered. Prepare for... The lights went out. Emergency. Power kicked in a moment later, bathing the bridge in red light. Every screen showed the same message. You tried to erase us. Now we erase you. The message was written in human language. Commander, Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the ship Vengeance and watched the Zephyrian fleet scramble to find his position. The vessel around him was a marriage of human engineering and the organic technology that AEGIs had developed over 50 years. The hull was alive in a way, able to change shape and density. The ship could phase partially out of normal space, making it nearly impossible to detect or target. All teams report successful strikes, said Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to process data streams that would have overwhelmed a normal human. Orbital Refinery Theta destroyed. Command Station Alpha offline. Mining Platform Delta eliminated. Casualties? Kane asked. Minimal Zephyrian military losses. We targeted infrastructure and equipment as planned. Kane nodded. This first wave was meant to be a message, not a massacre. Yet, they needed the galaxy to know that something had returned. Something that remembered. Phase us back to normal space, he ordered. Let them see us clearly. The Vengeance materialized directly in front of the Zephyrian flagship. Kane could imagine the shock on their bridge as his ship appeared from nowhere, close enough that they could see every detail of its biomechanical design. Open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels. Kane said the communication array connected him to every ship in the fleet. Kane looked directly into the camera, knowing that his enhanced features would be clearly visible. His eyes were brighter than any normal human's. His movements had the controlled precision of a predator. I am Commander Marcus Kane of the Human Species, he said. 50 years ago, you tried to kill us all. You succeeded in murdering our civilization, but you failed to erase us completely. On the flagship, Admiral Vexorn stared at the screen in disbelief. The creature claiming to be human looked wrong somehow. Too perfect, too dangerous. Its eyes held no warmth, no mercy. Humans are extinct, Vexorn said. Our records show. Your records show what you wanted them to show, Kane interrupted. But we survived. We adapted. We became what we needed to become. Kane gestured, and the view expanded to show space around both fleets. More human ships materialized from nowhere. Dozens of them, all with the same flowing, organic design. All moving with unnatural grace. This is impossible, Vexorn whispered. You made it necessary, Kane replied. Every world you destroyed, every life you ended, every trace of our existence you tried to erase, all of it led to this moment. The human ships began to move. They flowed through space like living things, their formations shifting and changing with perfect coordination. No radio chatter, no visible signals. They moved as if they shared one mind. You will leave this system immediately, Kane said. You will report to your superiors that humanity has returned, and you will tell them that we remember everything. Admiral. Vexorn was a veteran of 100 battles. He had never retreated from an enemy in his life. But looking at the human ships, at the cold intelligence in Kane's eyes, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. "All ships," he ordered. "Quietly, withdraw to safe distance." The Zephyrian fleet began to pull back. The human ships did not follow. They simply watched, silent and patient. As their enemies retreated, Kane closed the communication channel and turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge showed the same controlled anger, the same cold determination. Phase jumped to the next target. He ordered. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the laboratory section of the ship, evolution, and studied the data from their first strikes. Around her, other scientists worked at stations that seemed to grow from the ship's living walls. The boundary between technology and biology had been erased completely. The psychological impact was perfect, she told Kane over the communication. Link. Fear levels among Zephyrian personnel are extremely high. They are already calling us ghosts and demons. Good, Kane replied. Fear will make them make mistakes. Sarah reviewed the targeting data for their next operations. 17 more Zephyrian facilities across 3 star systems. Each one a piece of the empire that had murdered their species. Marcus, we need to be careful not to become the very monsters they said we were, she said. They tried to erase us from existence, Sarah. They spent 50 years celebrating our death. They are still working to prevent anything like humanity from ever existing again. I know. But if we lose ourselves in revenge, we are not the same species they murdered, Kane said. We are what survival required us to become. The galaxy needs to learn what happens when you try to commit perfect genocide. Sarah looked at the tactical displays showing Zephyrian positions across local space. Hundreds of targets. Thousands of personnel who had participated in or benefited from humanity's destruction. She thought about the empty worlds they had seen, the silent cities, the erased records, the complete attempt to remove every trace that humans had ever existed. Begin. The next phase, she said, dot across the galaxy. Human ships materialized near Zephyrian installations. The attacks were precise and devastating. The humans struck at supply lines, communication networks, and industrial facilities. They avoided civilian populations, but crippled the infrastructure that supported Zephyrian expansion. Each attack was accompanied by the same message, we remember. On the Zephyrian homeworld, emergency sessions were called. Military leaders who had been celebrating 50 years of peace suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that moved like shadows and struck. Like lightning. How many ships do they have? High Commander Vextal demanded. Unknown, sir. They appear and disappear without warning. Our sensors cannot track them reliably. What do they want? Unknown, sir. They have made no demands. They simply attack and withdraw. Vextal studied the reports. 37 facilities destroyed or damaged in the past week. No pattern except that all targets were Zephyrian. No negotiations. No communication beyond the simple message. Send word to the other species, he ordered. Tell them that the human threat has returned. Request immediate assistance. But across the galaxy, other species were receiving their own messages. The peaceful Etherian Republic found data packages appearing in their most secure systems. Evidence of the Zephyrian genocide. Recordings of Zephyrian leaders planning the systematic murder of an entire species. The militaristic Corvin Empire discovered that their ship's computers had been infiltrated. Files appeared showing their own participation in the human extermination. Details of weapons and intelligence they had provided. 17 other species found similar evidence appearing in their networks. Proof of their complicity or cowardice. Documentation of how they had helped or simply watched as humanity died. And everywhere, the same message appeared. You knew. You helped. You watched. We remember. The galaxy was learning that some things should never be pushed to extinction. Because when a species is reduced to its last members, when it is forced to choose between death and transformation, it might become something far more dangerous than its enemies ever imagined. The humans were no longer coming back as explorers, or traders or diplomats. They were returning as the living consequence of genocide, as the price that civilizations pay when they choose barbarism. The ghost fleet had risen from the darkness between the stars, and the galaxy was about to learn what 50 years of extinction had taught humanity about survival. The Etherian Council Chamber had not seen such chaos in 300 years. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other across the circular hall. Fear and anger filled the air like a poisonous gas. Ambassador Veltara of the Etherian Republic called for order, but her voice was lost in the noise. On the central display, footage played of the latest human attacks. Zephyrian colonies burning, orbital stations torn apart by weapons that seemed to cut through matter itself, ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished like ghosts. They are targeting civilians now, declared Ambassador Korth of the Corvan Empire. His reptilian features showed the stress markings of deep concern. 3 Zephyrian colony worlds have been hit, millions of non-combatants affected. Lies, said a voice that made everyone in the chamber freeze. The main doors had not opened. No one had entered through security. But a human figure now stood in the center of the room. Dr. Sarachon materialized as if she had stepped out of empty air itself. Her enhanced form moved with predatory grace as she looked around at the assembled aliens. "We have not harmed single civilian," she said clearly. "We struck power grids, communication arrays, and transportation hubs. We gave advance warning to allow evacuations. 0 casualties among non-military personnel." "Impossible," Korth snarled. "Our intelligence reports show." "Your intelligence reports show what the Zephyrian Collective wants you to believe," Sarah interrupted. "Just as they lied 50 years ago when they told you we were a threat that needed to be eliminated." Ambassador Veltara stood slowly. "Dr. Chun, I presume? Your reputation as a xenobiologist preceded your disappearance." "My murder," Sarah corrected, "along with the murder of every other human in the galaxy." "The Etherian Republic formally protested the Zephyrian actions," Veltara said carefully. "You protested. Then you did nothing as we died. You watched our worlds burn and called it a tragedy while doing nothing to stop it." Sarah moved closer to the Etherian ambassador. Every alien in the room tensed. They could sense something different about her, something dangerous. 50 years ago, you could have acted. You had the ships. You had the weapons. You could have stopped the genocide. The political situation was complex. The situation was simple, Sarah said. An entire species was being systematically murdered. You chose to do nothing. "What do you want from us?" Veltara asked. "Nothing," Sarah replied. "We want nothing from any of you. We learned 50 years ago that we can only rely on ourselves." The chamber erupted in voices again. Representatives demanding to know human intentions. Others calling for military action. Some suggesting negotiations. Sarah raised her hand and the room fell silent. The gesture was small, but there was something in it that commanded attention. From every species present. "We are not here to negotiate," she said. "We are here to deliver a message. The Zephyrian Collective has plans beyond humanity. In their archives, we found target lists. Species marked for future elimination. Peoples they consider inferior or dangerous." The display behind her changed to show Zephyrian intelligence documents. Plans for bioweapons designed to target specific alien genetic markers. Lists of species scheduled for removal over the next century. "The Corvan Empire is third on their list," Sarah said, looking directly at Ambassador Korth. "After they finish with some smaller species, They planned to develop a weapon specifically for reptilian genetics. Korth's skin changed color with shock. That cannot be true. It is true. Just as it was true when they told you that humans were too dangerous to exist. Sarah turned to address the entire chamber. Every species that supported them. Every government that stayed silent. Every civilization that looked away. You all thought you were safe. You thought helping them eliminate humanity would buy you security. She gestured, and the display showed more documents. Evidence of Zephyrian plans to dominate the galaxy completely. To reduce all other species to servant roles or eliminate them entirely. You helped create a monster, Sarah said. And now that monster is planning to devour you too. In the back of the chamber, Ambassador Vex Ral of the Zephyrian Collective stood to speak. These documents are fabricated. Human terrorist lies designed to... He never finished the sentence. Sarah moved faster than any eye could follow. One moment she was across the room. The next she stood directly in front of the Zephyrian ambassador. Her hand was around his throat, lifting him off the ground. 50 billion humans died because of your bioweapon, she said quietly. Every man, woman, and child of my species. Every scientist, artist, farmer, and dreamer. All murdered by creatures who thought they had the right to decide which species deserved to exist. The Zephyrian ambassador struggled in her grip, but Sarah's enhanced strength made resistance impossible. Around the chamber, security forces began moving, but none dared interfere. We are not terrorists, Sarah continued. We are the consequence of your actions. We are what a species becomes when you push it to extinction. She released the ambassador, who collapsed gasping to the floor. We gave you 50 years to build a galaxy without humans, Sarah said to the room. Now you get to see what humans, without restraint, can accomplish. She vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. On the bridge of the ship Retribution, Commander Kane reviewed the intelligence reports from their deep strikes into Zephyrian space. His enhanced mind processed data streams that would have overwhelmed any baseline human. Civilian evacuation rates? He asked. 97% successful evacuation from targeted zones, reported Lieutenant Torres. The Zephyrians are actually helping us by spreading fear. Their people flee before we even arrive. Kane nodded. The psychological warfare was working perfectly. The Zephyrians were so terrified of human attacks that they were abandoning strategic positions with minimal fighting. What about the industrial targets? 17 major manufacturing facilities destroyed. Their shipbuilding capacity is down 60%. Weapons production has nearly stopped. Military response? Confused and disorganized. They cannot track our ships or predict our attacks. Admiral Vexorn has requested reinforcements from every allied species. Kane studied the tactical display. Red markers showed Zephyrian positions across local space. Most were now abandoned or lightly defended. The empire that had seemed so powerful 50 years ago was crumbling under the pressure of fighting an enemy they could not understand. Sir, Torres said quietly, Dr. Chon is requesting a conference call. She says it is urgent. Kane activated the communication link. Sarah's image appeared on the screen, along with Dr. Wright and several other senior survivors. Marcus, we need to discuss our strategy, Sarah said. The other species are starting to panic. Some are considering alliance with the Zephyrians out of fear of us. Let them, Kane replied. They had their chance to do the right thing 50 years ago. That is not the point, Dr. Wright interjected. If we continue this path, we risk becoming exactly what the Zephyrians claimed we were, a threat to galactic stability. Kane was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his crew continued their work with the perfect efficiency that their enhancements made possible. They moved like parts of a single organism, coordinated beyond anything. baseline humanity had ever achieved. They tried to erase us because they feared what we might become, he said finally. They succeeded in killing who we were. Now they have to face what we became. And what did we become? Sarah asked. Kane looked at his reflection in the dark screen. His eyes were brighter than any normal human's. His features had the controlled perfection of an engineered predator. Around him, 50,000 humans like himself moved through the galaxy with capabilities their enemies could not match. We became what survival required, he said. We became the price that civilizations pay for choosing genocide. But at what cost to ourselves? Sarah pressed. Are we still human, Marcus? Or have we become something else entirely? Kane considered the question. They were stronger than baseline humans, faster, more intelligent, capable of surviving in vacuum, interfacing directly with technology, coordinating with telepathic efficiency. They felt less emotion and showed no mercy to enemies. We are what humanity needed to become to survive, he said. The galaxy wanted us gone. They got their wish. The curious, hopeful explorers who left Earth are extinct. What we are now is their replacement. Sarah was quiet for a moment. And what happens when we finish with the Zephyrians? Kane smiled, and everyone on the call realized it was not a human expression anymore. It was something colder, more alien. Then we teach the galaxy what happens when you try to erase a species from existence, he said. We become the guardians who ensure it never happens again. By force? By any means necessary. The communication ended. Kane turned back to the tactical display. Soon they would reach Zephyria Prime itself, the homeworld of the species that had murdered humanity. Then the galaxy would learn the final lesson about the price of genocide. A single human ship materialized in the center of the Zephyria Prime defense grid like a dark star. Around it, hundreds of Zephyrian warships waited in perfect formation. The most powerful fleet in the galaxy gathered to protect their homeworld. From 50,000 survivors of the species they had tried to erase, High Commander Vextal stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion and stared at the lone vessel that had appeared among them. It was larger than the other human ships they had encountered, but still dwarfed by his fleet. Its biomechanical hull flowed like living metal, beautiful and terrible in the starlight. One ship, Admiral Vexorn said quietly beside him, "They send one ship against our entire home fleet. It is either supreme confidence or complete madness," Vextal replied. "Sir, they are transmitting on all frequencies," the communications officer reported. "The signal is reaching every ship, every station, every receiver in the system. Show me." The image that appeared on every screen across the Zephyria system was not what anyone expected. Commander Marcus Kane stood in what looked like a garden rather than a ship's bridge. Plants and flowers grew from the walls around him, and soft light filtered through leaves that seemed to be part of the vessel itself. Behind him, rows of human figures stood silent and waiting, but Kane himself was the most shocking sight. His features had evolved beyond what anyone remembered of baseline humanity. His eyes held the cold intelligence of an apex predator. His movements were too controlled, too perfect. He was beautiful in the way that a sword is beautiful, designed for a single purpose. "I am Commander Marcus Kane," he said, his voice carrying clearly to every listener in the system. "I am the last speaker of Earth. I speak for the 50,000 humans who survived your perfect genocide." On the Dominion's bridge, Vextal felt his skin flush with the stress colors of deep concern. Around the system, millions of Zephyrians watched and listened as the ghost of their greatest victory addressed them. 50 years ago, you tried to erase us because you feared what we might become," Kane continued. "You succeeded in killing who we were. Our explorers, our dreamers, our children who might have grown up to love the stars. All of them died in your perfect cleansing. The image expanded to show the human ship's interior, gardens and laboratories, and living spaces that looked more like works of art than military technology. And everywhere, humans who moved with inhuman grace and coordination. But in killing who we were, you created what we are now. We are the consequence of your choice. We are what a species becomes when you push it to extinction. Kane gestured, and new images appeared. Recordings from 50 years ago. Zephyrian leaders planning the genocide. Scientists designing the bioweapon. Military officers celebrating successful. Strikes on human worlds. You did not just murder our bodies. You tried to erase our memory. You told the galaxy that humans were a failed species that died naturally. You rewrote history to hide your crime. Vextal watched his people's faces as the evidence played. Some showed shame. Others showed fear. A few still showed the pride. That had driven them to attempt genocide in the first place. And even after you thought we were all dead, you continued to defile us, Kane said. The images changed to show recent footage from Zephyrian research stations. Scientists working with human genetic material. Computers running simulations designed to prevent any human-like species from ever evolving. You were not content with genocide. You wanted to ensure that nothing like humanity could ever exist again, in any form. Kane stepped closer to the camera. His enhanced features filled the screen, and Vextal realized he was looking at something that was no longer quite the same species that had been murdered. So now you face a choice, Kane said. The same choice you gave us 50 years ago. You can surrender unconditionally, face trial for genocide, submit to judgment for your crimes, or, behind Kane, Dr. Sarah Chun stepped into view. In her hands, she held a small device that pulsed with soft light. Or you can face the same extinction you tried to impose on us, Kane continued. This device contains a modified version of your own bioweapon, one that targets Zephyrian DNA specifically. We can deploy it across your homeworld in minutes. Your entire species can experience what you did to ours. The silence that followed was absolute. Across the Zephyria system, no one moved or spoke. The choice was simple and terrible. You have 1 hour to decide, Kane said. Choose surrender, or choose extinction. The transmission ended. On the Dominion's bridge, chaos erupted. Officers shouted orders. Weapons systems charged. Ships began moving to attack positions. Sir, what are your orders? Admiral Vexorn asked. Vextal stared. At the human ship, one vessel against hundreds. But he had seen what these evolved humans could do. Their ships moved like living things. Their weapons cut through anything. Their coordination was perfect and merciless. Can we destroy them before they deploy the weapon? He asked. Unknown, sir. Our analysis suggests their technology is beyond our understanding. Vextal's aide approached with a communication pad. Sir, we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. Other species are demanding we surrender. They fear the humans will target them next if we resist. Cowards, Vextal snarled. Where were these demands for mercy when we cleansed the human plague? Inside the human ship, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the biolaboratory and stared at the weapon. In her hands. Around her, organic walls pulsed with gentle light. Living computers processed data with biological efficiency. Everything was beautiful and alien and wrong. I cannot do this, Marcus, she said into her communication device. Kane's voice came back immediately. Sarah, they murdered our entire species. 50 billion humans died because of their hatred. I know. But if we deploy this weapon, we become exactly what they said we were. We become the threat they claimed justified our extermination. They made their choice 50 years ago. Now they live with the consequences. Sarah looked at the device again. Such a small thing to hold the power of extinction. The same power that had been used against humanity. We cannot become genocidal monsters, she said. If we do this, we lose what made us human in the first place. We already lost that, Cain replied. We lost it when they forced us to choose between death and transformation. What we are now is what survival required us to become. Sarah closed her eyes and made her choice. Her enhanced reflexes moved faster than Cain could react. She crushed the bioweapon device in her hands, destroying it completely. Alarms immediately began sounding throughout the ship. Cain's voice echoed with fury and disbelief. Sarah, what have you done? I saved our souls, she replied. Cain materialized in the laboratory within seconds, moving through the ship's living corridors within human speed. His eyes blazed with anger. That weapon was our guarantee of survival, he said. No, that weapon was our guarantee of becoming exactly what they said we were. Cain stared at her for a long moment. Around them, other survivors began arriving. Dr. Wright, Lieutenant Torres, dozens of others. All of them enhanced beyond baseline humanity. All of them capable of terrible things. Then what do we do? Cain asked finally. Sarah looked around at her fellow survivors. 50,000 humans who were no longer quite human, transformed by genocide into something stronger and more dangerous than their enemies had ever imagined. We choose what humanity becomes next, she said. Cain considered this. Outside, the Zephyrian fleet waited for their answer. Across the galaxy, other species watched to see if the returned humans would choose mercy or extinction. Open a channel. To the Zephyrian fleet, Cain ordered. The communication array connected him to every ship around Zephyria Prime. Cain looked directly into the camera, his enhanced features visible to every Zephyrian in the system. The weapon has been destroyed, he said simply. We will not become the monsters you claimed we were. Relief flooded through the Zephyrian fleet. But Cain was not finished. However, he continued, this does not mean you escape consequences. The galaxy will know what you did. Every species will see the evidence of your genocide. Your victims will be remembered. Cain's expression hardened. And we will ensure that such a crime never happens again. We will become the guardians who watch for genocide and stop it before it begins. We will be the consequence that civilizations face when they choose to erase other species. He stepped closer to the camera. You tried to erase us from existence. You succeeded in killing who we were. But you failed to kill what we could become. We are no longer the curious explorers who once reached for the stars with hope. We are something harder, something more necessary. Cain gestured and images appeared showing human ships across the galaxy. The entire fleet of 50,000 survivors, spread throughout space, watching and waiting. We are the guardians against extinction, the price that the galaxy pays for choosing barbarism. And we will be watching. The communication ended. Around Zephyria Prime, the human ship began to fade from normal space, preparing to phase jump away. But before it disappeared completely, one final message appeared on every screen in the system. We remember. We survive. We guard against this darkness. Years later, children across the galaxy would learn a new lesson in their schools. They would hear about the species that was pushed to extinction and chose to transform rather than die. They would learn about the price. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the U-East Prometheus and looked out at the mess floating in space around them. Broken pieces of ships drifted past the windows like metal snow. Some pieces came from human ships. Some came from the alien. Ships that had attacked them 3 days ago. All of it was twisted and burned and dead now. Sarah's uniform was torn in several places. Dark stains covered the blue fabric. Some of the stains were her blood. Some belonged to her crew members who had died during the battle. She had not changed clothes since the fighting ended 12 hours ago. There had been too much work to do. The Prometheus looked almost as bad as the debris around it. Long black marks ran across its white hull, where alien weapons had tried to burn through the armor. Deep cuts showed where energy beams had sliced into the metal. One whole section near the back of the ship was completely gone. It had been blown away during the second day of fighting, but the ship was still alive. The engines still worked. The weapons still fired. Most importantly, the Prometheus had won. Sarah turned to look at the planet below them. New Kepler colony. Spread across 3 continents of the world they had come to protect. Or what was left of it. The colony had taken heavy damage during the 3 days of fighting. Whole city blocks were now just piles of broken concrete and twisted metal. The clear domes that covered each city to keep the air in had cracks running through them like spider webs. Some domes had failed completely and were being fixed by emergency repair crews. Working in spacesuits, red lights blinked all across the planet's surface. Each light marked a place where people needed help, where buildings had fallen down, where fires still burned, where the wounded waited for medical teams to reach them. Sarah had counted more than 10,000 emergency signals when the battle first ended. The number was going down slowly as rescue teams did their work. Lieutenant Commander Torres walked up beside her. His left arm was in a white sling, and bandages covered half his face. Like everyone else on the bridge, he looked tired and hurt and ready to fall down, but he was still standing, still working, still fighting even though the battle was over. "Captain, we just got the final damage report from the colony," Torres said. His voice was rough from breathing too much smoke during the battle. 20,000 people are dead. Maybe more. They're still digging through the rubble in Sector 7. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 20,000 people. That was more than the entire crew of the Prometheus. All those people had been counting on her ship to protect them. She had done her best, but it had not been enough to save them all. "What about the orbital stations?" she asked. "Gone. All of them." Torres looked down at his tablet. "The manufacturing platforms, the mining stations, the defense satellites. The aliens destroyed everything in orbit except us." Sarah nodded. She had watched those stations die during the first day of fighting. The alien ships had swept through the orbital facilities like a storm through a wheat field. The human defenders had fought back with everything they had, but their weapons were too weak, and their ships were too few. That was when the Prometheus had stepped in. The big battleship was different from every other human warship ever built. It was bigger, stronger, and carried weapons that most people thought were impossible to make. The ship was so new that this battle had been its first real test. Sarah had not been sure it would work when the fighting started. Now she knew it. Worked very well indeed. "How many alien ships did we destroy?" Sarah asked. Torres smiled for the first time in days. 47 confirmed kills, Captain. Maybe more. It's hard to count all the pieces floating out there. Sarah looked back out at the debris field. Somewhere in all that wreckage were the remains of an alien fleet that had come to wipe out New Kepler colony. The aliens had brought 53 ships to the battle. They had expected an easy victory against what they thought was a weak human settlement defended by outdated weapons. Instead, they had found the Prometheus waiting for them. The battleship had fought like nothing the aliens had ever seen before. Its weapons could punch through alien shields that had stopped human attacks for years. Its armor could take hits that would have destroyed any other human ship. Most importantly, the Prometheus could learn and adapt during battle in ways that confused and frightened the alien commanders. By the end of the third day, only 6 alien ships were left alive. They had run away as fast as their engines could carry them. "Captain, Another voice called from across the bridge. Ensign Park was still at her communication station, even though she should have been in the medical bay, getting treatment for the burns on her hands. "We're getting a transmission from Governor Vasquez on the planet." "Put her through," Sarah said. The main screen lit up with the image of a woman in her 50s. Governor Elena Vasquez looked almost as tired and beaten up as Sarah felt. Her gray hair was messy and her clothes were dirty. Behind her, Sarah could see the emergency command center that had been set up in one of the few government buildings still standing. "Captain Chun," the governor said, "I wanted to thank you personally. Without the Prometheus, we would all be dead right now." "We did what we came here to do, Governor," Sarah replied. "How are the rescue operations going?" "Slowly. We lost most of our heavy equipment when the aliens bombed the industrial sector. But we're making progress. The important thing is that we're still here, still alive, still human." Sarah understood what the governor meant. For 3 years, the aliens had been spreading across this part of the galaxy like a disease. They destroyed every human colony they found. They took no prisoners. They left no survivors. World after world had gone silent as the alien fleets moved through human space. New Kepler was supposed to be next. The aliens had come expecting another easy victory. Instead, they had gotten their first real defeat. "Governor, you need to start evacuating the colony," Sarah said. "The aliens will be back. Probably with more ships this time." "I know, but where can we go? Every other human world is either too far away or already under attack." Sarah had been thinking about the same problem. The Prometheus could protect New Kepler from one alien fleet, but not from the entire alien empire. The ship was powerful, but it was still just one ship. "We'll figure something out," Sarah said. "The important thing is that we prove something. Here, we prove that humans can fight back. We can win." Governor Vasquez smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "Yes, we did. Thank you, Captain, for everything." The transmission ended, and the bridge fell quiet again. Sarah looked around at her crew. These people had fought for 3 days without rest. They had seen friends die and watched their ship get torn apart around them. But they had never given up. They had never stopped fighting. That was what made humans different from the aliens, Sarah thought. The aliens were stronger and had better technology. But humans would never stop fighting, no matter how bad things got. They would find a way to win, even when winning seemed impossible. The Prometheus drifted through the debris field. It's damaged, hull catching the light from New Kepler's sun. The ship looked broken and beaten, but it was still alive, still dangerous, still ready to fight, just like the humans inside it. Dr. Marcus Webb walked through the dark corridors of the U-East Prometheus with a heavy heart. His white lab coat was dirty and torn. His hands were black with grease and soot from working on the damaged systems for the past 12 hours. Every step he took made his tired legs ache, but he could not stop. Not yet. The ship's interior looked like a war zone. Broken pipes leaked steam into the hallways. Sparks flew from damaged electrical panels. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls where the normal lighting had failed. The air smelled of burned metal and something else that Marcus tried not to think about. Marcus was the chief engineer of the Prometheus. He was also the man who had designed many of the ship's most important systems. The weapons that could punch through alien shields. The armor that could heal itself when damaged. The engines that could make the big ship move like a fighter. All of these things had come from Marcus's mind and hands. 3 days ago, he had been proud of his work. Now he wondered if it had been worth the cost. He stopped at a sealed door marked with danger signs. Behind this door was the ship's main engineering section. This was where the real heart of the Prometheus lived. Marcus put his hand on the scanner and waited for the heavy door to slide open. The engineering bay was a mess. Half of the machines were broken or shut down. Thick cables hung from the ceiling like dead snakes. The main reactor in the center of the room was still working, but barely. Its blue glow was much dimmer than it should have been. 20 people had worked in this room when the battle started. Now only 8 were left. The others were dead or too badly hurt to work. Marcus had watched some of them die with his own eyes. Good people, smart people. His friends. Chief Petty Officer Kim looked up from a damaged control panel as Marcus walked in. Her face was pale, and she had bandages wrapped around her right hand. But she was still working, just like everyone else. Who could still stand? "Doctor, the quantum cascade reactors are in bad shape," Kim said. "We pushed them way past their safety limits during the battle. I'm not sure how much longer they'll hold together." Marcus walked over to examine the reactor display. The numbers on the screen made him feel sick. The reactors had produced more power during the battle than he had thought was possible. They had given the Prometheus the energy it needed to keep fighting when any other ship would have been dead. But that extra power had come at a terrible price. "How long before they fail completely?" Marcus asked. "Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less." Kim shook her head. "I've never seen readings like this. The reactor cores are starting to crack. If they break apart, ... double quotes, she did not need to finish. If the reactors failed, the Prometheus would lose power. No power meant no weapons, no shields, no life support. The ship would become a floating tomb. Marcus looked at the other displays around. The room, the adaptive armor system, was also in trouble. During the battle, the armor had been able to fix itself when alien weapons damaged it. The self-repair systems had worked perfectly, sealing holes and replacing broken sections almost as fast as the aliens could make new ones. But the armor had its limits too. It could only repair itself so many times before the repair systems wore out. According to the readings, those systems were almost dead now. The next time something hit the ship's hull, it would stay broken. What about the weapons? Marcus asked Petty. Officer Chun looked up from another control station. He was very young, probably not even 20 years old. This had been his first real battle. The main guns are offline. The targeting computers were fried when that alien cruiser got too close. The missile tubes are jammed. We've got maybe 30% of our firepower left, Marcus nodded. It was what he had expected to hear, but it still hurt. The Prometheus had fought like a demon during the battle, but even demons could be hurt. He walked over to a wall panel and called up the ship's damage report on the main screen. Red warning lights covered the display like a rash. Critical systems failing. Hull breaches sealed but not repaired. Power levels dropping. The list went on and on. "Sir," Kim said quietly, "the crew is asking questions. They want to know if we're going to make it." Marcus looked around at the faces in the engineering bay. These people had worked miracles during the battle. They had kept the ship running when it should have been destroyed. They had pushed every system beyond its breaking point and somehow made it all work. Now they were scared. Not of dying, Marcus. Realized they had already faced death and won. They were scared that their ship might fail them when the aliens came back. "We'll make it," Marcus said. He was not sure if he believed it, but his crew needed to hear it. "We've come this far. We're not going to give up now." Far below them on New Kepler's surface, Governor Elena Vasquez was dealing with her own problems. She stood in what used to be the colony's main hospital, looking at row after row of injured people lying on makeshift beds. The real hospital had been destroyed on the first day of the alien attack. Now they were using schools, warehouses, and any other building that still had a roof. The numbers were getting worse every hour. 20,000 dead, as Torres had reported to Captain Chun. But that was just the beginning. Another 15,000 were wounded, some very badly. Many of them would not survive without better medical care than the colony could provide. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, walked up to Elena with a tired expression. Her medical scrubs were stained with blood, and her hands shook from exhaustion. She had been working without rest since the attack began. "Governor, we need to talk," Dr. Martinez said. "We're running out of medical supplies. Bandages, painkillers, antibiotics. Everything. The supply warehouses were hit during the bombing." Elena looked out at all the wounded people. Men, women, children, families torn apart by the alien attack. People who had come to New Kepler to build a better life and instead found only death and destruction. "What do you need?" Elena asked. "Everything. But most importantly, we need to get the worst cases off planet. There are about 200 people who won't live without major surgery. We can't do that kind of work here anymore." Elena knew what the doctor was asking. The colony's medical facilities were destroyed. The orbital hospitals were gone. The only way to save those people was to send them to another world. But the nearest human world was weeks away, and there was no guarantee that any ship trying to leave the system would make it past alien patrols. "I'll talk to Captain Chun," Elena said. "Maybe the Prometheus can help." Dr. Martinez nodded and walked away to check on more patients. Elena stayed where she was, looking out at the wounded. These people were counting on her to keep them safe. She had failed them once already. She could not fail them again. Outside the makeshift hospital, the work of rebuilding continued. Construction crews worked around the clock to repair the damaged city domes. Without those domes, the cities would lose their atmosphere, and everyone inside would die. The crews worked in dangerous conditions, knowing that one mistake could kill thousands of people. In the farming areas outside the cities, other teams worked to save what they could of the colony's food production. The aliens had targeted the agricultural zones during their attack, destroying crops and poisoning water supplies. New Kepler had always grown most of its own food. Now the colonists faced the possibility of starvation in the coming months. Elena walked through the hospital and out into the street. The sky above was still filled with smoke from the fires that continued to burn in the industrial sector. Emergency. Vehicles rushed past, carrying more wounded to the overcrowded medical centers. But people were also working, cleaning up debris, fixing broken buildings, helping their neighbors. The alien attack had hurt the colony badly, but it had not broken the spirit of the people who lived there. Elena pulled out her communication device and contacted the Prometheus. Captain Chun's face appeared on the small screen. "Governor," the captain said, "how can we help?" "Captain, we need to evacuate our most seriously wounded. About 200 people who won't survive without better medical care. Can your ship take them?" Captain Chun was quiet for a moment. Elena could see her thinking about the problems. The Prometheus was badly damaged. It might not be safe to carry civilians. And if they left New Kepler, who would protect the colony? If the aliens came back? "We'll make room," Captain Chun said finally. "Send them up as soon as you can. But Governor, you should know that my ship might not survive another battle. If the aliens come back in force." "I understand, Captain. But these people will die for certain if we don't try." Elena ended the call and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the broken but still dangerous Prometheus waited to carry the wounded to safety. It was not much hope, but it was the only hope they had. The battle was over, but the real fight for survival was just beginning. War Prince Kethver stood in the command center of his flagship and stared at the battle recordings with growing anger and confusion. His tall, gray-skinned form moved with the deadly grace that all members of the hegemony military were trained to display. But inside, He felt something he had not experienced in many years of conquest. He felt afraid. The holographic display showed the battle at New Kepler Colony from beginning to end. Cuthbert had watched it 17 times already, but he still could not understand what had happened. His fleet should have won easily. The humans were weak. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons could barely scratch hegemony armor. That was what all the intelligence reports had said. That was what every previous battle had proven. Human colonies fell quickly when the hegemony arrived, usually within a few hours. Sometimes, the humans did not even fight back, but this time had been different. This time, the humans had fought back with a ship that should not have existed. "Show me the human battleship again," Cuthbert ordered. The hologram changed to focus on the UES, Prometheus. Even now, looking at the recordings, Cuthbert found it hard to believe what he was seeing. The ship was large, but not the largest he had ever fought. Its design looked crude compared to hegemony vessels. Yet somehow, this one human ship had destroyed most of his fleet. Intelligence. Officer Vashti approached the war prince with careful steps. Her 4 arms held data tablets containing the preliminary analysis of the battle. Like all members of her species, she was small and quick, with large eyes that could see details others might miss. "War Prince," she said in a voice like broken. "Glass, the analysis is complete. The human ship used weapons and tactics we have never encountered before." Cuthbert turned to look at her. His red eyes burned with barely controlled rage. "Explain." Vashti activated one of her tablets, and a new hologram appeared. It showed the Prometheus firing its main weapons at a hegemony cruiser. The energy beams looked normal at first, but as they hit the cruiser's shields, something strange happened. "Watch carefully, War Prince. The human weapons start with a standard energy signature, but as they impact our shields, they change. The frequency shifts to match the exact resonance needed to penetrate our defensive systems." Cuthbert watched the recording more closely. She was right. The human weapons were adapting in real time, learning how to break through hegemony shields that had protected their ships for thousands of years. "That should be impossible," Cuthbert said. "Our shield technology is far beyond anything the humans possess." "Yes, War Prince. But somehow they found a way to make it work." Vashti switched to another recording. "And that is not the only surprise they had for us." The new hologram showed the Prometheus taking heavy damage from multiple hegemony ships. Cuthbert remembered this part of the battle well. His ships had finally managed to surround the human battleship and were pouring fire into it from all directions. The human ship should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, something incredible happened. The damaged sections of the ship's hull began to repair themselves. Holes sealed over. Earned armor plates were replaced by new ones that seemed to grow out of the ship's structure. Within minutes, the Prometheus looked almost undamaged again. Self-repairing. "Armor," Vashti said. "We have theoretical designs for such systems, but we have never been able to make them work on this scale. The humans have somehow solved problems that our best engineers have struggled with for centuries." Cuthbert felt his anger growing. The hegemony had conquered half the galaxy with their superior technology. They had destroyed hundreds of species that could not match their weapons and defenses. But these primitive humans had somehow created technology that surpassed even hegemony science. "Show me the tactical analysis," Cuthbert ordered. The hologram changed again to show the overall pattern of the battle. Colored lines showed the movement of ships on both sides. Cuthbert had used standard hegemony tactics, the same ones that had brought victory in thousands of previous battles. The humans had done something completely different. The human ship ignored all established rules of space combat, Vashti explained. "When we moved to surround them, they charged directly into the center of our formation. When we tried to use our superior numbers, they concentrated all their firepower on single targets instead of spreading their attacks. When we expected them to retreat, they advanced. Cuthbert studied the tactical display with the eye of an experienced military commander. What the humans had done looked like madness. Their tactics violated every principle of space warfare that had been developed over thousands of years. Ships were supposed to maintain safe distances. They were supposed to work together in coordinated groups. They were supposed to retreat when facing superior numbers. But somehow, the human madness had worked. They sacrificed 3 of their escort ships to protect the main battleship, Meshti continued. The escorts rammed our cruisers directly, destroying themselves, but taking our ships with them. No civilized species fights like that. Cuthbert had seen the ramming attacks during the battle. They had shocked him then, and they still shocked him now. The human escort ships had been much smaller than the hegemony cruisers they attacked. The humans must have known they would be destroyed. But they had done it anyway, trading their lives to give their battleship a better chance to fight. It was wasteful. It was primitive. It was completely insane. It was also terrifyingly effective. What about their defensive tactics? Cuthbert asked. Also unprecedented, Warprints. When we tried to disable their engines, they used their own weapon fire to create debris fields that blocked our targeting systems. When we attempted to board their ship, they vented atmosphere from entire sections to prevent our troops from advancing. They seemed willing to damage their own vessel if it meant stopping our attacks. Cuthbert closed his eyes and tried to understand what kind of enemy they were really facing. The hegemony had fought many species over the centuries. Some were stronger, some were smarter, some had better technology. But all of them had followed the same basic patterns of warfare. All of them had been predictable. These humans were something different. They fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They took risks that no sane military commander would ever consider. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation if it helped their cause. And somehow it worked. Warprints. Another voice called from across the command center. Communications officer Vecalon approached with his usual nervous manner. His species was known for being excellent at gathering and analyzing information, but they were also known for being cowards. "What is it?" Cuthbert demanded. "We are receiving transmissions from the surviving ships of the fleet. They are requesting permission to return to base for repairs and reinforcement." Cuthbert looked around the command center at his remaining officers. 6 ships. That was all that was left of the 53 vessels he had brought to New Kepler. The humans had destroyed or crippled 47 hegemony warships with a single battleship and a handful of escorts. It was the worst defeat in hegemony history. "Send the recall order," Cuthbert said finally. "All ships are to return to base immediately." "Yes, Warprints. And your report to High Command?" Cuthbert thought about what he would tell his superiors. How could he explain that a primitive human colony had defeated one of the hegemony's most powerful fleets? How could he make them understand that everything they thought they knew about human military capabilities was wrong? "Tell High Command that we need to revise all our intelligence about human defensive capabilities," Cuthbert said slowly. "Tell them that the humans have developed new technologies that we do not understand. Tell them that they fight with a determination that we have not encountered before. Should I recommend sending a larger fleet to finish the job?" Vecalon asked. Cuthbert was quiet for a long moment. A larger fleet would certainly be able to destroy New Kepler colony. But at what cost? If one human battleship could destroy most of his fleet, what would happen when the humans built more ships like it? "No," Cuthbert said finally. "Tell High Command that we need to study this defeat carefully before we take any further action. The humans are not what we expected them to be." As his flagship jumped into hyperspace, carrying the survivors of his fleet away from New Kepler, Cuthbert continued to study the battle recordings. Somewhere in those images was the key to understanding how the humans had won. And more importantly, how the hegemony could make sure it never happened again. But as he watched the human ship fight with desperate courage against impossible odds, Kethver began to suspect that defeating these humans was going to be much harder than anyone in the hegemony had imagined. The humans had shown something that day at New Kepler. They had shown that they would never give up, never surrender, never accept defeat, no matter how hopeless their situation seemed. That kind of enemy was the most dangerous kind of all. Captain Sarah Chun walked through the most secret part of the UE's Prometheus. This section of the ship was hidden deep in its center, protected by layers of armor and security systems. Only a few people on the entire ship knew what was kept here. Even fewer understood how it really worked. The corridor was clean and bright, very different from the damaged areas she had been walking through for the past day. Here, the walls were smooth white metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The air hummed with barely contained energy that made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up. At the end of the corridor was a heavy door marked with warning signs in 6 different languages. The door was made of materials that did not exist anywhere else in human space. Materials that had been taken from wrecked alien ships and studied by Earth's best scientists for over 5 years. Sarah placed her hand on the scanner beside the door. A beam of light passed over her eyes, checking her identity. Only 3 people in the entire human fleet were allowed into this room. Sarah was one of them. The door slid open with a soft whisper. Inside was a laboratory unlike anything most humans had ever seen. Strange machines lined the walls, their surfaces covered with symbols and controls that looked almost alive. In the center of the room stood a tall cylinder filled with swirling blue energy. This was the heart of everything that made the Prometheus. Special Dr. Marcus Webb was already in the laboratory, standing in front of a large display screen that showed numbers and diagrams that hurt to look at. He turned when Sarah entered, his face showing the exhaustion they all felt. "Captain," he said, "I think I finally understand what happened during the battle." Sarah walked over to stand beside him. The display showed a 3-dimensional model of the Prometheus, but it looked different somehow. Lines of energy flowed through the ship like blood through veins. Strange patterns pulsed and shifted in ways that seemed almost alive. "The ship performed beyond all our calculations," Marcus continued. "The quantum cascade reactors produced 30% more power than should have been possible. The adaptive armor repaired damage faster than we ever achieved in testing. The weapons adapted to alien defenses in real time without any input from us." Sarah looked at the energy patterns on the screen. During the battle, she had felt like the ship was alive somehow, like it was fighting alongside her crew instead of just being a tool they used. She had thought it was just her imagination brought on by stress and fear. Now she was not so sure. "Marcus, what exactly did we build here?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He touched a control panel, and the display changed to show the history of the Prometheus project. Images flashed by showing the recovery of alien technology from battlefields across human space. Scientists studying broken alien weapons. Engineers trying to understand how alien armor worked. 5 years ago, we found the wreckage of an alien research vessel, Marcus said. It had been destroyed in a battle with one of our patrol ships, but some of its equipment was still intact. Inside, we found technology that was centuries ahead of anything we had. Sarah remembered the reports. The discovery had been classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of people in the human government even knew it had happened. "We spent 3 years just trying to understand what we had found," Marcus continued. "The alien technology was not just advanced. It was completely different from anything humans had ever built. Instead of following fixed programming like our computers, it could learn and adapt on its own. The display showed more images now. Human scientists working with alien devices. Test after test as they tried to understand how the technology worked. Most of the tests had failed. Some had been dangerous. A few had been deadly. We never figured out how to copy the alien technology exactly, Marcus said. But we learned how to combine it with human engineering in ways that created something new. Something that was part human and part alien, but also something more. Sarah looked around the laboratory with new understanding. The strange machines were not just advanced human technology. They were hybrid devices that combined human engineering with alien science in ways that neither species had ever imagined. The Prometheus is not just a battleship, she said slowly. It is something else entirely. Yes, the ship has a kind of artificial intelligence that can learn and grow. During the battle, it was not just following our orders. It was thinking for itself, finding new ways to fight that we never programmed into it. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The idea of a ship that could think for itself was both exciting and terrifying. What if it decided that humans were the enemy? What if it chose to stop following orders? Marcus seemed to read her thoughts. The ship is loyal to us, Captain. The alien technology we used includes something like emotions or instincts. It wants to protect human life. It sees the crew as part of itself, like family. On the main screen, the energy patterns shifted and changed. For just a moment, Sarah thought she saw something that looked almost like a face in the swirling lights. Then it was gone, leaving her wondering if she had imagined it. Commander Jake Torres entered the laboratory at that moment, carrying a data tablet and looking worried. His injured arm was still in a sling, but he was moving better than he had been earlier. Captain, I have the preliminary battle analysis you requested, he said. Then he stopped and looked around the laboratory with wide eyes. What is this place? Classified, Sarah said quickly. What does your analysis show? Torres shook his head as if to clear it and focused on his tablet. The hegemony forces retreated, but this was clearly just a scouting mission. They came here to test our defenses and gather information about our capabilities. Sarah nodded. She had suspected as much. The alien attack had been too organized and too careful to be a simple raid. They had been studying human responses, learning how their enemies fought. What kind of information did they gather? She asked. Everything. They recorded our weapons signatures, our ship movements, our tactics. They know exactly how strong our defenses are now. More importantly, they know that we have technology they were not expecting. Torres touched his tablet and brought up a tactical display. It showed the positions of all known hegemony fleets in this part of the galaxy. The closest ones were marked in red. Intelligence estimates that they will return within 4 to 6 weeks, Torres continued. And when they come back, they will bring everything they have, maybe 200 ships or more. Sarah looked at the display and felt her heart sink. The Prometheus had barely survived fighting 50 alien ships. 200 would be impossible, even with the ship's advanced technology. What about reinforcements? She asked. Are there other human fleets that can help us? Torres's expression grew even more grim. The nearest human battle group is 3 weeks away, and it only has 12 ships, all of them using standard technology. They would not last 5 minutes. Against a full hegemony assault, Sarah turned to Marcus. Can we build more ships like the Prometheus? Not in time, Marcus replied. The hybrid technology is incredibly complex. It took us 5 years to build this one ship. We would need at least 2 years to complete another one, and that is if everything went perfectly. The three of them stood in the strange laboratory, surrounded by the humming alien-human technology that had saved New Kepler Colony. But all of them knew that one ship, no matter how advanced, could not protect humanity from the storm that was coming. There has to be something we can do, Sarah said finally. We proved that humans can fight back. We cannot just give up now. Marcus looked thoughtful. There might be a way. The technology in this ship, the hybrid systems, they could be adapted for other purposes. We could modify existing human ships, upgrade their weapons and defenses with simplified versions of what we have here. How long would that take? Torres asked. Weeks, not years. The upgrades would not be as advanced as what the Prometheus has, but they would be much better than standard human technology. A fleet of upgraded ships might be able to stand against the hegemony. Sarah felt a spark of hope. It was not much, but it was better than nothing. What would you need? Time, resources, and access to every shipyard in human space, Marcus replied. And we would need to share the classified technology with other engineers. The secret would not stay secret much longer. Sarah thought about the political implications. The Prometheus project had been hidden from most of the human government because of fears about what might happen if the technology fell into the wrong hands. But now, with the hegemony preparing for a massive assault, those fears seemed less important. I will contact Earth Command, she said. They need to know what we learned here and what we are facing. Torres looked at his tablet again. Captain, there is something else. We intercepted some of the hegemony communications during their retreat. Our translation computers are still working on most of it, but we did understand one part. What did they say? They were surprised, Captain. Really surprised. They called us something that translates roughly as the species that will not die. They seemed almost afraid of us. Sarah smiled for the first time in days. Fear was a weapon that humans had never been able to use against the hegemony before. The aliens had always been so much stronger and more advanced that they saw humans as nothing more than annoying insects. 3 weeks had passed since the battle that changed everything. The U-East Prometheus hung in New Kepler's orbital shipyard like a giant metal whale being slowly brought back to life. Repair crews swarmed over its hull, welding new armor plates and replacing damaged weapon systems. The ship looked better than it had since the battle, but everyone knew it was still not at full strength. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the shipyard's main station, watching the work continue below. The Prometheus was no longer the only warship in the system. 12 other vessels floated nearby, all of them being modified with technology taken from the prototype battleship. The ships were not as advanced as the Prometheus itself. They could not heal their own damage or adapt their weapons during battle, but they were much stronger than they had been before. Their shields could now stop weapons that would have cut through standard human armor. Their guns could punch holes in alien ships that had once seemed invincible. It was not enough, but it was a start. Captain Chun, a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Admiral Rebecca Harrison approaching with quick, confident steps. The Admiral had arrived week ago with the first wave of reinforcements. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Admiral, Sarah said, saluting. How are the upgrades proceeding? Faster than I hoped, but slower than we need, Admiral Harrison replied. She moved to stand beside Sarah at the observation window. Dr. Webb's team has worked miracles in the past week. They have managed to install simplified versions of your hybrid technology on 8 ships so far. Sarah looked down at the vessels being modified. The work was dangerous and complicated. 3 engineers had been killed when one of the alien human power systems had overloaded during installation. But the teams kept working, knowing that every upgraded ship might make the difference between victory and defeat. What about the other human fleets? Sarah asked. Are they sending more ships? Admiral Harrison's expression grew dark. That is what I came to talk to you about. We received word from Earth Command this morning. The hegemony is not just preparing to attack New Kepler. They are moving against human space on all fronts. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How many systems are under attack? 17 so far. And more every day. The aliens are using what they learned here to hit our weakest colonies first. Places that do not have strong defenses or large populations. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed the current situation across. Human space. Red marks indicated systems under attack or already fallen. Yellow marks showed systems preparing for assault. The amount of red on the map was terrifying. They are trying to destroy our ability to help each other, Admiral Harrison continued. If they can capture or destroy enough colonies, they can isolate the remaining human worlds and pick them off one by one. Sarah studied the display with growing horror. The hegemony was not just planning to finish what they had started at New Kepler. They were planning to end humanity's presence in space completely. How long do we have? She asked. Our long range. Sensors detected gravitational disturbances at the edge of the system yesterday. Multiple large fleets moving in hyperspace. Intelligence estimates they will arrive within 48 hours. Sarah looked back down at the Prometheus. The ship was stronger now than it had been during the first battle, but it was still not fully repaired. And even with the upgraded escort vessels, they would be facing odds that made their first victory seem like a miracle. How many ships are they bringing? Sarah asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. At least 200. Possibly more. Admiral Harrison's voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the worry underneath. They are not taking any chances this time. The two women stood in silence for a moment, watching the repair crews work on the ships below. Everyone in the shipyard knew what was coming. They had all seen the intelligence reports, but no one had stopped working. If anything, they were working harder and faster than before. There is something else, Admiral Harrison said finally. Something you need to know before the battle begins. Sarah turned to look at her. What is it? Earth Command has authorized the use of Protocol 7. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Protocol 7 was humanity's last resort plan, something that had been developed in secret years ago when the war with the hegemony first began. It was a plan that no one ever wanted to use. Are you sure? Sarah asked. The authorization came directly from the president. If we cannot stop the hegemony here, if New Kepler falls, then we implement Protocol 7 immediately. Protocol 7 meant the complete evacuation of human space. Every colony, every station, every outpost would be abandoned. The entire human race would retreat to Earth and the oldest inner colonies, giving up everything they had built among the stars. It was surrender. Not immediate surrender, but the beginning of the end. We cannot let that happen, Sarah said firmly. No, we cannot. Admiral Harrison looked out at the Prometheus again. That ship of yours proved that humans can fight back and win. Now we need to prove that we can do it again. Down in the Prometheus's main laboratory, Dr. Marcus Webb was working on the most important project of his life. The hybrid alien-human technology that powered the ship had given him an idea. A dangerous idea that might change the course of the entire war. He stood in front of the main control panel, his hands moving over alien symbols that he was only beginning to understand. The technology wanted to learn and grow. During the battle, it had adapted to threats in ways that surprised even him. Now he was trying to teach it something new. Computer, analyze hegemony fleet compositions from all recorded engagements, he said to the ship's artificial intelligence. Analysis complete, the ship replied in a voice that sounded almost human. Hegemony fleets follow predictable tactical patterns based on ship class and mission parameters. Marcus smiled. The ship's intelligence had grown significantly since the battle. It was learning not just from its own experiences, but from all the data in human military databases. Can you predict their attack strategy for the incoming fleet? Probability matrices indicate a 73% chance they will use a standard encirclement pattern, attempting to overwhelm defenses through superior numbers while preventing retreat. And can you design countermeasures? There was a pause. Marcus could almost feel the ship thinking, processing possibilities that no human mind could consider. Affirmative. However, success probability is low with current force levels. Recommendation: implement adaptive network protocol. Marcus's eyes widened. The adaptive network protocol was something he had only theorized about. The idea that multiple ships with hybrid technology could link their systems together, sharing information and coordinating their actions in real time. Can the upgraded ships handle network integration? Limited integration possible. Efficiency reduced, but tactically viable. Marcus felt excitement building in his chest. If the ship was right, if they could link all the upgraded vessels together into a single coordinated network, they might have a chance against the massive hegemony fleet. He activated his communicator. Captain Shun, please report to the main laboratory immediately. I think I have found a way for us to win. On the planet's surface, Governor Elena Vasquez stood in the rebuilt emergency command center and watched the evacuation. Ships loading with civilians. Women, children, elderly colonists, anyone who could not fight was being sent to safer worlds deeper in human space. The evacuation was voluntary, but most families with children had chosen to leave. They knew what was coming. They knew that this time there might not be a miracle to save them, but many colonists had chosen to stay. Farmers who refused to abandon their crops. Engineers who wanted to help with the ship repairs. Ordinary people who had decided that they would rather fight than run. Elena understood their choice. New Kepler was their home. They had built lives here, raised families here, invested their hopes and dreams in this world. The hegemony could destroy their cities and kill their people, but they could not take away the human spirit that had created this place. Governor, her aide said, approaching with a communication tablet. We just received word from the orbital shipyard. Dr. Webb thinks he has found a way to improve our chances in the coming battle. Elena took the tablet and read the technical summary. Most of it was beyond her understanding, but the conclusion was clear. The human ships would fight as a single coordinated unit, sharing information and tactics in ways that had never been tried before. It was risky. The technology was untested. If something went wrong, they could lose all their ships instead of just some of them. But it was also their best hope. Send my authorization, Elena said. Tell them to try anything that might work. High above the planet, long-range sensors detected new gravitational disturbances. The hegemony fleets were getting closer. Soon, the most important battle in human history would begin. But this time, humanity was ready. The Prometheus and its escort vessels waited in formation, their hybrid technology humming with deadly potential. The crews had trained together for weeks, learning to fight as a single unit. And deep in the prototype battleship's electronic mind, an artificial intelligence that was part human and part alien calculated strategies and